Oh, it's Chris.
Okay, we're recording now.
Good morning, everybody, for the Fire and Performance Management meeting. If we go straight to the agenda, because it's quite a busy one today. Item 1, have we got any apologies, Sally?
I've got apologies from Wayne Hodgins.
Right. And if anybody does come in, they'll let us know. Item 2, declaration of interest. If any member got any interest they wish to declare, and if going through the reports and need to declare an interest, please state it to anybody, okay? Right, item 3, the chairperson's announcement. I've got nothing as such yet. Right, item 4, to receive the minutes of the Finance, Audit and Performance Management meeting held on the 23rd of November 2020 on page 5. If I go through it in order. So page 5, page 6, and page 7, and also page 8. Does anybody want to raise anything on their minutes?
Nope.
Would like to propose them? Yeah.
Propose?
Yeah, and I'll second them. So, right. Nobody there. Right then, if you move on to the next one, the Finance Asset Performance Management Scrutiny Group, held on the 12th of October 2020, page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13 and 14. And page 15.
No.
Anyone want to raise any issues regarding them minutes?
I move them.
Right, I'll second them because it's all quiet there. Right then, if you move on to item 5, that's the Treasury Management Strategy 2021 to 2022, page 17. Was that yours, Chris, or Gareth?
Yeah, I'll take that, Chair. Apologies, I just spotted there's a typo in the heading of this report. It says the Finance, Audit and Performance Management Committee, so we'll get that corrected, I'm sure. This is the first of the 3 annual cycle of Treasury Management performance reports, Chair. Essentially, this is the one that sets the strategic indicators for the year to come, so for 2021-22. The report itself is pretty standard. I'm sure members are used to the format of the report now. There are no major policy changes within this document, so it follows the type of Treasury management borrowing and investment strategies that you adopted in the past. There's a couple of tables I just wanted to draw members' attention to, really, in terms of the figures. First is on page 23 of the agenda, which is the capital expenditure. Members will see at the top of that table there's actually an estimate of the total capital programme for each of the years. And members will note that 21-22 is quite a significant increase there to 8.6 million. That's largely because we are picking up the slippage from the current financial year. So we obviously push those programme items forward. We'll come to this issue a bit later on in the agenda when we discuss the closure of accounts report, because the auditors have sort of made comment on the delivery of the capital programme and the planning of the capital programme. So I'll pick that up at that point. So it does reflect that slippage. Page 26 of the report shows members the actual debt position of the authority in that top table there. And again, members will note sort of about 2/3 of the way down that table, it states the actual gross debt at the 31st of March. And you'll see that it increases up to about £38 million by the end of this particular planning period. Again, that reflects the fact that obviously we've got an element of aspirational capital programme delivery in there. It does depend, that borrowing, on firstly, all of the programme being delivered, and secondly, there being no other finance coming in through grant aid or other sources that would mitigate that borrowing. So it's just to kind of highlight that position. And following on from that, really, on page 27, the last table there shows the actual percentage of the revenue budget which is devoted to financing the capital programme. And members will note that there's a sort of gradual increase in that table up to about 7.5%. Again, that increase reflects the aspirational nature of the current programme, and that obviously would drop off in the event that we don't complete the programme. But we have said underneath there that essentially we've sort of set a ceiling, an informal ceiling that says that we would seek to keep that below 10%. And I think I'm on record in previous meetings as saying, figures around the 6-7% mark, certainly not worrying for a kind of typical borrowing programme to underpin the capital programme of a local authority of our nature. I wasn't going to pick up any of the rest of the detail in the report, Chair, unless members have got any particular questions they wanted to raise in terms of the actual strategy itself.
Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask Chris regarding the
No.
report?
Not with regard to the report. I got on fine with that. There's a reference to link. There's no concerns there, are there? Because I was reading an article and I see we use them for sort of assessing and giving us advice. So I just wondered. No concerns with link?
No, none at all.
Thank you very much. And also the explanation.
The only question I've got, I'll ask it, you probably partly covered, Chris, is, with the indicators, on the 23-24, are you saying we're looking to stay around the same figure or come down?
Well, we set the figures, Chair, based on obviously the programme that we're actually looking to deliver. They are kind of ceiling figures. We're estimating there, but they are intended to be ceiling figures, which we don't go above in most cases. In practice, what tends to happen is as we go through the year, elements of the programme will slip, which will obviously mean we don't have to finance so much capital expenditure in year. And the other thing that does tend to happen is that along the way, we will pick up grant aid for certain projects as well, or find other ways of financing. So that sort of avoids the need to borrow as well. So it really depends on the delivery. We'll come on to that, I say, in a later report, because it's one of the...
You said yourself at 10%. I was hoping we weren't going to go higher and higher until we reach our ceiling. That was all.
Yeah, and that's not the intention, Chair. And as one of the developments of the new medium-term financial strategy, we will look at the sort of programming of the capital programme and how it feeds into that medium-term financial plan.
Excellent, thanks for that. Is there any other questions now for Chris before we move on to the recommendation? No? Well, the recommendations are that to note and recommend the Fire and Rescue Authority approve the following: the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, a Capital Prudential Indicators and Minimum Revenue Provision Policy, the Borrowing Policy and Treasury Indicators and Limits, the Annual Investment Strategy, and the Treasurer to update strategies and policies as necessary throughout the year. So, are members happy to note that? Anybody not happy with that?
Yeah,
Happy to move that.
Chair, I can't see everybody, so I'm going to have to take a vote on that one.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was going to ask that. So,
Okay. Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Ibrahim.
Yeah, agree.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
in favour.
Councillor Harries.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey is still not with us. Councillor Smith.
In favour. Yep.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks everyone for that. If we now move on to item 6, is the health check of priority actions and quarterly progress against the statutory performance indicators. Page 45. Who's leading on that one?
That's me, Chair. Sorry,
Yeah,
I can't I lost you then for a
I've
minute.
no problem in case.
So this is the third quarterly report on the strategic priorities for the authority, together with the relevant performance data. So you'll see set out the 8 strategic themes that we're working to. I'm not going to go through it all in detail because there's huge amounts of information there, but to pick out on a few particular bits that members may be interested in, obviously our LEAF learning evaluation after the fire has now been rolled out to all stations, but unfortunately we haven't had any individuals responding to complete that questionnaire to date. The Waterside Community Responder Scheme has also been implemented in
You're frozen, Sally.
businesses likely to be affected there.
I think we missed the last couple
All
of minutes now.
site-specific.
You froze.
Sorry?
We missed the last, whatever you said before, Angus, you froze.
My connection's playing up today. I was talking about the Waterside Community Responder Scheme, which has been implemented in Cardiff Bay. It's now being rolled out in Newport area, which hopefully will be of benefit come the summer when some of the restrictions will be eased. In relation to fire safety, we've now completed all of the outstanding site-specific risk information visits at all our high-rise and residential care premises. So we're working with a variety of responsible people there to take any necessary additional actions in relation to fire safety at those premises. We also submitted our response to the Welsh Government consultation on the fire authorities becoming statutory consultees for planning applications, and that one's looking to come into place fairly shortly. Members will be getting a report at the next fire authority meeting on the fire safety white paper that's recently been consulted upon, so you'll get more information there. And there was one other point in relation to page 59 on the job evaluation scheme. Obviously it mentions their reports going to the February finance audit, February HR and Equalities Committee and the March Finance and Audit Committee, and then on to Fire Authority. There has been a slight delay as more evaluations being undertaken to ensure that the
We froze again. You froze again.
So before we move on to the
Sal, you're freezing, Sal. So I don't know whether you want to turn your screen off and just talk rather than try that.
Right.
That's better.
Shall I try that?
Yeah, go on, Sal. That's fine. Yeah.
Did you get the bit on the job evaluation?
Yeah, we heard about that. Yeah, there's a couple of questions we can do anyway. So whenever you're ready.
Okay. Before I move on to the performance stats, do you want to deal with any questions on that section of the paper first?
David, did you want to come in first?
As a local authority in Bridgend, I know the fire authority are informed of our applications in the borough. So making a statutory, would that make any difference to Bridgend at all? I don't know whether other local authorities are informed. I don't know. But I know Bridgend, as I said.
Yeah, at the moment we're notified by some local authorities on some of their more major applications, but obviously this would make us become a statutory consultee for all of our local planning authorities in the area, and we'd be consulted on more developments than we currently are.
Would that mean then that you'd have to respond to each application, or could you not respond or choose not to respond?
We would have to respond on those that we're consulted on, yes.
Cheers, thank you.
Adrian, did you want to come in with a question?
No, no, what it was, Chair, just want to apologise for joining the meeting late. We had to go down and pick bread up for our food bank.
Yeah, brilliant. Sal, did you want to carry on, or is there anyone else?
Yeah, I'll carry on with the performance stats.
Yeah.
So performance, you'll see that the only one where we're over 5% on target is our total false alarms attended. Obviously, at the moment, with lots of premises shut, that's quite a challenging one. 2 amber targets, so that's just within 5% of target. Other special service calls attended, we would expect that one to be higher this year as we're assisting other agencies a lot more during the pandemic, and our infamous confined to room of origin indicator that we've always struggled with. Other indicators are all green. There's a breakdown at the end of the report for each council unitary authority area, and we'll be sending those out to all of the fire authority members for their respective council areas after the meeting has finished.
Excellent. Yeah. And they're excellent for other members within our boroughs to see what's actually happening.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask, Sal, you said earlier about being involved with a planning process. What I have noticed in our particular borough is we're also involved with some of the licensing.
Right.
We're normally consulted as well regarding if there's particular venues want something with a license for the fire service, or so I don't know whether you're aware of that.
No, I mean, certainly we don't issue licenses as a fire authority, but the new proposals would mean that we are consulted on key developments within council areas.
Yeah. What I'm at is normally if there's a premises, they normally we're consulted, because I tend to have to declare an interest when I'm on licensing quite often.
Right.
Just to make you aware of it, I know where the planning is all,
Yeah.
So
I think Councillor Smith was trying to come in.
Sorry?
Yeah. If I may, on the report from Monmouthshire, that on page 77, there's a reference to the fatality caused by a fault with a freezer. And I wondered sort of what the process was. It's a problem with the freezer, a fatality. Is it do we pass it back to the makers, or how is it pursued?
That data's collated nationally by all the fire and rescue services. So as we have fires involving, be it freezers, fridges, washing machines and tumble dryers are the more common, that data on makes and models are all fed back in nationally so that we can get a UK-wide picture to pick up the trends there.
No, thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, well with that. Any other questions for Sal? None? So we've got to note all that, Sal, haven't we?
Bear with me, let me just find the recommendation. Yes, noting the report's fine.
So we're happy. Is anybody all happy to note that? Anybody happy with it, or just to see if we go through it all?
Yeah. Accept.
I have to say it like that.
Yeah, I'm happy to accept.
Yeah, no, that's fine then. If we move on then to item 7, which is the draft annual report of the work of the Finance, Audit and Performance Management Committee and the discharge of terms of reference of the Finance, Asset and Performance Management Scrutiny Group. That's page 83.
Yes, page 83, Chair.
Going to take you through this, Chair.
Yeah, I'll walk you through the report. So this looks at the work of the FAPM committee and its scrutiny group. Finance and Audit Performance Committee is established to demonstrate the authority's commitment to efficient and effective deployment of public resources and the attainment of related performance targets, and the committee being responsible for the planning and management of the authority's financial resources, overseeing the financial reporting process and providing assurance on the adequacy of the risk management framework and associated control environment. The committee also assists the authority in policy and strategy development issues relating to FAPM and good governance issues. So if I take you through the report itself, we look first at the financial elements that the committee have been reviewing across the year, including revenue and capital monitoring. In particular, a new one for the last municipal year was the paragraph 3.5, the expenditure during COVID-19, where members have received briefings detailing the funds that have been spent through COVID-19 and the associated reciprocal arrangements with Welsh Government. The committee have also reviewed the reserve strategy, the revenue and capital budget setting and the statement of accounts, as well as looking at treasury management and the medium-term financial strategy. Looking at policy, audit and development, we have details there of the internal audit arrangements for the year, and where the committee agreed the internal audit programme, and it specifies the areas of internal audit that the committee agreed, and the committee has considered the progress and findings of those relevant audits. We also then talk about the external audit arrangements for the Fire Authority, and then move on to performance management. The committee has received a number of performance management reports across the year. And you've also received additional reports on business fire safety. You've had an annual summary report on that, and also a report on the emergency services network update. Then moving on to scrutiny, the committee is responsible for the scrutiny function of the authority and undertaken a considerable amount of scrutiny work throughout the year, following the thematic approach again. You've also included the appointment of member champions and reviewed a number of asset management plans across the service, also looking at sustainability and environmental issues. Moving on to paragraph 6, or section 6, there are additional areas of work still to be undertaken, and these are all on the agenda for today's meeting. Obviously, when this report is then prepared for the Fire Authority, the elements of work that have been undertaken today will be embodied in the main element of the report. And then we move on to Appendix 1, which is the annual report of the Finance, Asset and Performance Management Scrutiny Group. The appendix talks about the purpose of the group and the financial responsibilities that the group have taken throughout the year, and then look at other areas of work which they've undertaken. It also talks about the asset management responsibilities, and looks at the asset management plans, including the property strategy, the ICT plan and the vehicle strategy plan, amongst others that have been reviewed in the municipal year. And then moving on, there was the appointment of member champions, and we had our 4 members championing these specific areas for the last municipal year. And then a large piece of work that the Scrutiny Committee undertook was looking at the proposed options for reform within the Scrutiny Committee and the proposed new terms of reference, which I know is an agenda item later on today as well. The Scrutiny Committee also reviewed the departmental risk register and the initial draft of the annual governance statement, and had an update for the future trends report. So moving back to the recommendation, I'm asking that members consider the report and make any necessary amendments to its content prior to reporting to the Fire and Rescue Authority as a summary workload carried out by the committee and scrutiny group during the municipal year.
Thank you, Chair. It's a long report.
Chair, I got to leave. If I can get back, I'll try and get back. All right.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything before you went?
No, you're chairing it very good. I can't say anything.
That's okay then. I'll speak to you soon.
Anyway, all the best to you all if I don't come back. But meeting the AM, I don't know how long it take. But
okay, thanks, Tudor.
All the best.
Yeah. Anybody got any questions they'd like to ask Sarah now?
No, I think it was a very good summary.
Yeah, no, it's a very clear report, and I'm well impressed, Sarah. As for the one recommendation, yeah, that comes in item 14. Yeah, and we deal with it then. So everybody happy with the recommendations? We need to have a vote on that, Sal?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Ibrahim.
It's on silent.
No. Come back to him. Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Harries.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim.
In favour.
Thank you.
Well, thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Lovely. Right then, if you move on to the next item then, which is item 8, the Revenue Monitoring Report 2020-2021, page 99.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this one. Morning, members. Usual format for the Revenue Monitoring Report. It's just the latest projection of our revenue position and showing the changes since our previous reporting to the committee in November. Back in November, we reported at that point then that we were forecasting an overspend of 424,000 for the year. But the latest projection, working with budget holders and the finance team, is that we're forecasting a projected underspend of 453,000. Obviously, that's a big swing in between reporting periods of 800,000. Appendix 1 sets out the detailed subjective analysis, and the report goes into quite a lot of detail as to some of the ups and downs and movements through the reporting period. But if I just take members through the sort of high-level salient points, obviously there's been a big decrease in the forecast spend for the employee area of the budget of £300,000, and there's a decrease in the non-salary costs then of 500,000. With the salaries element, obviously there's been a lot of vacancies and the number of retirements has exceeded the anticipated levels. So that's resulted in larger underspend in that area. Also, the timing of recruits courses has altered slightly. So getting the recruits in and operational, there's been slight delays there. So again, resulting in more of an underspend. We've also obviously made big savings in our travel and subsistence area of the budget due to the reduced travelling and reduced business mileage as a result of COVID. Similarly, within the training area of the budget then, the impact of COVID has obviously resulted in less training courses being put on, less availability to attend courses. So there's been a considerable saving of 143,000 in the training budget. With our supplies and services, there's a decrease there from previous reporting, and that again is linked to the PPE, linked to the level of retirements and the recruits coming into the service. Similarly, as stated earlier, with transport, we're obviously making savings on fuel as a result of less mileage being done. So there's a £64,000 increase in our forecast underspend for the transport costs. And then finally, we've had additional income in through the year of 267,000, and this is from a sort of mix of sources. the majority being from Welsh Government to support our COVID-related expenditure. But we've also had some additional income from Mid and West in relation to the Joint Fire Control, and some income then finally from Babcock's for our training facility in Cardiff Gate, and that's for the share of third-party income generation. Obviously, within the report, there's a lot more detail in the appendices. Appendix 3 sets out the forecast year-end position for our reserves. Appendix 4 gives a bit more detail on the COVID expenditure analysis. And then Appendix 5 details all of our grant-funded activities. Happy to take any questions at that point, Chair.
Has any members got any questions for Geraint?
Can I ask a question, Chairman, please?
Yes, carry on, Val.
There have been considerable staff movements, haven't there? Real swings. Retained duty and whole time duty system. I suppose just because people feel they want to go. I was interested to know, further ill health pension costs. That wasn't clear in my own mind. So if an officer retires on ill health, we actually cover that cost, or does it mean? I can't sort out in my mind how that works, please.
Yeah, there's an impact from ill health retirements. The majority of pension costs for firefighters are funded through Welsh Government.
Yes, but we pick up this one.
Well, if they retire on ill health, there's a charge that the service picks up, and then we pick up the ongoing retirement costs year on year then for those individuals.
So okay, thank you very much. That clarifies. No, I was just surprised at the amount of movement within staffing levels. That's people's personal choice. But what really pleased me was that last little 27,000 from Babcock. Is that the best we've ever received from them as their associate?
It's not the highest we've received in the last year or two, but as I say, it is something that we have started to receive in the last few years. So it is an additional bonus, really.
Yeah. No, thank you. Right, thanks, Chairman.
Thanks, Val. The only question I would ask: are we up to date with our COVID grant funding?
Yeah.
Yeah, we submit in the grant funds claims on a quarterly basis now, so they go in, but there's a time lag with the funds coming back then from when we submit the actual claim. But yeah, everything's negotiations and discussions are ongoing with Welsh Government at the time of the claim. Really, so.
That's good, as long as we're not losing out, and long delays. That's brilliant. Any other questions for Geraint before?
Chair, there was just one thing. On page 113, I was quite interested to see about this multi-sensor, about the misting system. I'd never heard about that before. Sprinkler systems, yes, but where are those delivered to? Are they delivered to care homes or places where there's vulnerable people?
I think they're obviously identified where there's particular risks, where home safety checks have identified that the misting system is suitable and required. So I could find out more detail from our operational colleagues on that, Councillor Drake.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that before. I was just curious.
I forgot about that actually. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah.
It does say in the report that they are for the extremely vulnerable.
Yeah. David, would you like to come in?
My understanding, I could be wrong. I thought in new homes built in Wales there had to be a sprinkler system in new homes as well. Is that correct, or I just made that up?
No, you're correct, Councillor White. New residential homes built in Wales do have to be fitted with domestic sprinklers, but that doesn't apply to commercial buildings.
Cheers, sorry, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, Sally.
I didn't realise that, Chairman, that it didn't apply.
No, I hadn't realised that until Sally said then.
Is it something the fire authority should sort of be concerned about and raising, that it's an omission?
I think that the commercial buildings all have to comply with the fire safety order. So the responsible those buildings have to undertake a suitable and sufficient fire risk assessment within their premises and put in place a plan and mitigation measures to make the level of risk acceptable. So there's alternative means of enforcing there.
Yes, yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Thanks for that, Sal.
Looking to the future, it's a shame if they don't build in a system.
Right. If we look into the recommendations that the Finance, Audit and Performance Management Committee note and agree with report content, are we all happy with that? Anybody wish to say anything else?
Right. If I take a vote, Councillor Colbrand,
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Spencer,
In favour.
Councillor Drake,
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim,
In favour.
Councillor Evans,
In favour.
Councillor Harries,
In favour.
Councillor Hussey,
In favour.
Councillor Smith,
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for that. We now move on to item 9 then, which is a Capital Monitoring Report 2020-21, and that's page 117.
Thanks, Chair. Again, similar format to the usual reporting from the movements from our last report on the capital programme back in November. The latest projection and the detail is set out in Appendix 1 against all the areas within the capital programme. The latest forecast is against the total budget of 7.9 million for the year. We forecast in a spend of 4.7 million and slippage of the year then of 3.7 million being carried forward, works anticipated to be done in the next financial year. The main areas to draw members' attention to within the report, within the property side of the capital programme, obviously this firstly talks around an overspend for the USAR building project, which is in Whitchurch Fire Station for the Urban Search and Rescue team. Whilst it's forecasting an anticipated overspend, this programme is being fully funded by Welsh Government. So it wasn't originally budgeted for in the programme, which is why it shows as an overspend. But we will be getting the funds in from Welsh Government, so there's no impact on us as a service for the costs there. The planned and preventative maintenance part of the programme it talks about there is in relation to the electric vehicle charging infrastructure that's been installed in the headquarters. That work has now been completed at a cost of £70,000. And that's net of the grant funding that was available, and that was drawn down directly by the contractors that fitted those on site. In relation to Pontypridd, then the refurbishment works on the Pontypridd station have been completed, with the exception of the external works. So the members gave agreement for additional funding to do work to demolish the existing drill tower, build a new drill tower and move it, and to move the external diesel tank. So that work is now going to be carried out within the next financial year. And then in relation to Newin, obviously we're in a period of discussion now over the purchase of a new site for the Newin station, and the works that's anticipated there is for the funding of land searches and investigation work on the piece of land that we're currently in negotiations with to purchase that site. In relation to vehicles then, there was 3 rescue tenders purchase was in the budget at the start of the year, and it was estimated at £235,000 per vehicle. Following the procurement exercise, the cost of these vehicles is coming in around £299,000, which is considerably over budget from what we'd originally estimated. Obviously, there's been other changes through the vehicle replacement programme then, which is the fleet engineer is having to make then to sort of offset and reduce some of the impact on the overall programme, which will then sort of find the money to negate the additional spending, so trying to negate the need to find money from elsewhere. So he's doing it from within his existing area of the budget, and some of those moves are set out in the report. Other areas to draw your attention to for operational equipment, we're looking to purchase new helmets. Obviously, we've got the new firefighting PPE coming in shortly, We're also looking to buy new helmets. And again, this is going slightly over budget. And the reason for this is a change in the framework that we purchase it from. And we've increased the spec, the requirements in the specification to include lighting and improved visors on those helmets. And then in relation to IT, most of the changes from previous reporting to IT are as a result of slippage, really, and delays resulting from COVID impacts. So there's some of the schemes that were there are having to be slipped into the next financial year, really, due to either work that we can't undertake internally or delays from suppliers. I think that's probably the main areas to draw members' attention to. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yeah, I need to declare an interest with New Win because I'm on the planning. So I forgot to do that one earlier. My fault. My own question is, with the savings, and I think you've done it well by the increase in costs for the rescue tenders and utilising one of your old vehicles and making a saving that way. I think that's very prudent, considering the extra costs for the tenders.
Yeah, there was obviously the option to come back to members and ask for additional funds on top of the programme, but obviously working internally and in discussions with Chris Denby, the fleet engineer, is looking to do things slightly different to rejig the programme and realign, so to try and find the money from within existing resources, really.
The reason I say that because previously, as you know, because of my forte, I said this would happen once we left Brexit, and the astronomical costs of specialised equipment would shoot up, which it has done, really.
Yeah, and I think probably a slight oversight is the budget was set based on historical vehicle requirements, and the new equipment that we buy is there's a lot more equipment and a lot better equipment on these appliances now than was previously on them. So that's something, a lesson learned, and that we need to take on board when we set in the budgets, really.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I knew this would happen. Any other questions for Karen?
Yeah. Only a comment, if I may, because I was intrigued with the increase in the vehicle costs as to whether we'd had sort of an estimate, but if it was based on old prices, fair enough, that can be a jolly good reason, I suppose. But what I did find interesting was the ICT equipment, that all of those seem to be reductions in cost, which is much appreciated, I think. So interesting, the one goes up and the other goes down. So just a comment, Chairman, that intrigued me.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
They've been prudent in their approach, and it's commendable, really. Any other questions for Geraint? No.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just for Geraint. Now we're out of the EU, and I know last year there was the questions of and the uncertainty of how the cost and everything will go up. Now with COVID-19, I know there's savings, but are we looking to see a huge cost with new vehicles and everything else? You probably answered that question, but I probably missed it.
No, as I say, we do. It's early days, really. We aren't seeing the huge increases, specifically as a result of Brexit. I think costs are naturally going up. There's been some delays through the programme. We've taken time to reassess what the vehicle replacement requirements are. We've naturally seen price increases go up through that anyway. One of the big impacts that we are looking at, and obviously the fleet in general going forward, is the shift to electric vehicles. Okay. Obviously, the difference in price for the purchase price of electric vehicles. So we will see a big rise there. But obviously, what we're looking then is savings on the running costs of the vehicles.
Yeah.
So this is finding that that balancing act there, really. But
and the other thing is what they don't realise. The equipment is specialised. It's not something you can pull off the shelf. That's why the costings vary quite dramatically with the specialists, and they have to be made separately, from everything else.
Through an impact analysis that we've done through procurement, there's only a small proportion of purchasing is direct from Europe, from vehicles. There's obviously indirect purchasing for the parts and that the within the construction of vehicles. But the direct purchasing, there's very, very little that we do direct from from the European community now.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I ask again, please, Chairman? Under the capital programme, there's no reference to Abergavenny. I presume the police are still living there in their porter cabin or whatever they're living in at our police station. And then at the bottom, there's the co-location contributions, which are nil. So is there no income from those who co-locate on our stations?
There is income from co-location, and that's part of the revenue costs. So they come in, income comes in there as part of the running cost of the buildings. Specifically around Abergavenny, the police are still on the site at the moment, but where they were looking to design and sort of increase the footprint of the station and take on board, another. A complete refurbishment of the station to accommodate the police. That scheme has sort of been shelved now, and they've withdrawn from it. So the police are now looking for an alternative site.
Well, they're parking in Morrison, so that's convenient. Thank you very much, Karen.
Any other questions over Karen? No? If we look for the recommendation, members note the budget and progress of capital schemes, approve alterations identified in Appendix 1 and associated movements in funding. Take a vote on that, Sal?
Yeah. Councillor Bolton?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Spencer?
Favour.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim?
In favour.
Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Harries?
In favour.
Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Smith?
Support.
And I think Councillor White has left. Okay.
Okay, thanks for that, Sal. Right then, we'll move on to item 10, which is the internal audit report, and that's on page 125. And who's going to be doing that one?
I think Steen's going to be doing it, Chair.
Yeah, I thought I'm just looking there. He volunteered.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Morning, members.
Morning.
I've got a few reports to go through on the agenda. So if I go through some of the highlights of each of the reports, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go through. So the first one on the report is review of sustainability paper usage. So you'll see from the executive summary, this was a reasonable assurance opinion. I think the review was undertaken to support the services implementation of the Carbon Reduction Plan 2020-30, which has been written in terms of support for Welsh Government's own carbon reduction commitments. I think it's probably worth noting that the service is one of our first clients to ask us to undertake a review around sustainability, so I think it should be commended for that. Maybe a bit of forward thinking there, so I think that's good. Some of the key strategic findings in terms of the report. So there's a carbon reduction plan, as I say, in place. The review itself focused on paper usage, but also picked up wider issues around waste management and recycling as well. So a couple of things to note. So there's new contracts in place for paper, waste disposal, and printers were being undertaken as the audit was undertaken. That will give the service an opportunity to better record, measure, and set targets for use and waste reduction. Some notable good practice. So there's a sustainable procurement policy in place. And also, as I was going through the review, there were a number of initiatives that have been implemented within service to reduce paper usage, as well as the printer and the waste contracts, things around digital mainly. So moving paper forms to digital forms, measures for data sharing. You saw on Garen's report in terms of the capital programme, Office 365, and all of the things that go along with that in terms of being able to manage file sharing and those kinds of things. So a good report. There were just 3 important, 3 routine and 3 operational effectiveness matters. Again, rather than go through each recommendation, if I just highlight some of the ones perhaps to give you some background information for.
See you go right over it then.
Yeah. So the first one, so arrangements be put in place to provide Fire Authority members and Finance and Performance Management Committee with periodic reports and delivery of the carbon reduction plan. Clearly, now the plan's in place, there's a need to have a mechanism for reporting back on delivery of that plan. In terms of recommendation 2, it was identified during the internal audit that projects are in place to procure alternative printer and waste collection services. And those services have begun to greatly understand waste streams in and out of the service. I think at the time, prior to that exercise, there was perhaps a limited understanding in terms of what materials were coming into the service and how, in particularly, I think the understanding needs to be created in terms of what happened to it, how it was disposed of, whether the kind of the sustainability around those disposal routes. And again, that's kind of part and parcel of the work that was undergoing through those contracts. Recommendation 3 and 4, I think, just build on the first 2 recommendations. So a need to collect data once the contracts are in place, and also periodic reviews to make sure that the waste pathways, that the materials coming in are understood, and you know what's coming in, and then how you dispose of it. Recommendation 5, clearly there's a need to engage with members of staff, promotion of recycling, in terms of paper, getting messages out there to think before you print and all those kinds of messages, aimed at reducing the paper usage within service. And recommendation 6. Sorry, really. Okay, recommendation 6. There's an ongoing project to look at the papers to Fire Authority and to the other committees, and there's perhaps some interesting data included in the recommendation around kind of the costs, but also the financial costs, but also the environmental costs. So £220 to print 5 meetings worth of mono printing for Fire Authority, which equates to 3 trees, but that analysis is based on just Fire Authority. It doesn't include all the other meetings that go on, doesn't include postage, and the environmental impact in terms of the vehicles and carbon usage kind of along the chain as well. So it's really interesting data there, and the recommendation is to kind of follow through on that review. Any questions on the report?
Can I just, Chairman, if I may?
Yeah, go on, Val.
It is something we need to follow on through, because I do commend the authority for the papers they send me. It's a pleasure to work with them, but I accepted the cost both financially and environmentally. At the same time, I couldn't cope with this meeting on a screen. So I do need some paper, but accept that what we have now, regrettably, I don't think as an authority we can continue with in this very nice style. Thank you.
Yeah.
I do like the trees.
Yeah. I'm the same thing as you, Val. Is I know we have to do printing like we do for these reports, but ICT is not up to speed yet to take these vast reports. I think we gotta look at it in ingenious ways, but how we do that's for another day, I think.
It's not the machines, Jim, it's my eyes.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? No, it's gone all quiet. So the recommendations, note the internal audit recommendations that were completed to date on the internal audit plan, annual plan.
Chair, there's a couple of other reports.
Yeah, no,
reports within.
We're going to do it that way because you've gone through the report now, right?
Yeah, I think if Steen continues to do the other final reports, and then we can do the recommendation at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the next report is the compliance review of mitigating controls. This is an audit we undertake on an annual basis. In discussions with the service, we select 4 risks from the risk register. The aim then is to obtain evidence and explanations to confirm that all the actions listed within the performance management system, BMIS, are either being undertaken or been implemented, and perhaps to tease out any other additional controls that might be in place. So the 4 risks we looked at this year were Brexit and core HR. And I've seen that in the Scrutiny Committee, you've probably looked at this already. So it's about where the HR data is stored pre-Brexit, The information was stored in the Republic of Ireland. Obviously, that's outside the EU, and arrangements need to be put in place going forward for the information to be brought in inside the EU. Equality and diversity, so that's the service's responsibility for increasing diversity and all the kind of benefits that would bring. COVID-19 is perhaps an obvious one. It's the measures put in place kind of operationally and to mitigate the risks that the service has experienced in relation to COVID. And the high-rise one then is in response to Grenfell, it's the actions, identification of properties and actions to manage the high-rise properties within South Wales. So I think good news, substantial assurance opinion. There were no recommendations at a high level, so there's an effective system for managing risk within the service through BMIS, and the audit identified through the evidence provided by the lead officers that there were all the actions listed within BMIS were being undertaken or had been implemented. Also notable areas of good practice, I think, which included there. So in terms of Brexit and core HR, so ongoing communication with Welsh Government, in terms of quality and diversity, active review and amendments to recruitment practices to support diversity. In terms of COVID, establishment of a critical incident team, which has been good practice. Not all of our clients have kind of adopted that approach. And similarly for the high-rise, so there's a high-rise working group as well, which oversees the service's response to Grenfell. Any questions on that one?
No, that's fine, yeah. Anybody else got any questions? No? Carry on, yeah. No, you're okay.
Okay, thank you. So the next report is the key financial controls. Again, a review we do on an annual basis. And again, an opinion, good level of assurance or reasonable assurance. Just one important recommendation. I think as part of all our audits, we're looking at how COVID might have impacted upon control and risk management. But as you can see, no recommendations around that. So nothing. We're looking for things like have approvals not been given, have processes, steps been missed, and things like that. But no issues in terms of that for key financial controls. Just one important recommendation, which was around update the financial procedure rules, which clearly have been affected by COVID, but only in terms of the ability to discuss the potential changes with staff, and I guess in the long term, any long-term effects that might affect what the rules might be from new ways of working. So, any questions on that report?
Well, that one's pretty straightforward. Anybody got any questions? No? Are you getting off likely?
Okay, thank you. So the next report is estate management delivery. Again, lots of kind of oversight in terms of the scrutiny group. I noticed through the minutes. The overall assessment is reasonable assurance. Some of the areas we're looking at through this review are kind of a stock asset condition surveys, identification and prioritisation of planned works, and also monitoring planned works and reactive maintenance activity. So overall, key strategic findings are there are robust governance arrangements in place. There are two priority 2 recommendations, which I'll give you some background to now. So the first one, recommendation 1, I think there's a spreadsheet used for tracking planned and reactive maintenance, which perhaps wasn't up to date at the time of the audit. So the recommendations around building in perhaps past and future planned maintenance activity to give a kind of more informed document for planning purposes. The next recommendation then, again, this is probably an argument I guess members are aware of. So it's there's always a balance between planned and preventative maintenance and reactive maintenance. So that can be done. What can be done about the budget and the cost that can be done about that can be about timing as well as asset use. So it's not just about the money. Your recommendations perhaps to enhance the decision, how decisions are documented and approved for transparency purposes. So there's perhaps appropriate challenge and rigour through, in particular, the kind of the estate strategy group. Any questions on that report?
No, any other members got any questions?
Nope.
No.
Fine.
Unless somebody count. Val, is that you?
No, I'm fine, Chairman.
All right, you come up on the screen, look. That's why I thought you wanted to ask a question.
Did I? Oh, right. I'll go on.
No, you're all right to carry on then.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the next report is what we call a summary of internal controls assurance, our progress report. I won't take you through any of the detail of this report really, because most of it is replicated within the annual report, which I'll go through shortly as the next agenda item. Just a couple of things to highlight in terms of our client briefing notes are way down in Appendix E. Some kind of frauds that perhaps members might want to be aware of. So perhaps not the client briefing note, the first one, ensuring wording on job applications reflects revised data disclosure barring service rules. There's been a change to the rules in England and Wales on what spent convictions are required to record on standard and enhanced certificates, and therefore there's a change in terms of applications, what their questions are to be recorded on different types of applications. So that's what that one's about. You'll notice in the plan document we're looking at safeguarding next year if the plan's approved, and that's DBS and vetting is one of the areas we'll probably pick up as part of that review. In terms of kind of the fraud alerts, the first one, festive fraud targeting organisations, that's kind of a compendium we do for clients collating frauds within the year, and this year was about invoice fraud and the rise in phishing attacks. The parking machine scam, it's probably one that's happened in the past, but members will already be aware of. There was proliferation of where machines were tampered with, so the face of the machine was tampered so that you could put your whole of your card in and then they wouldn't release the card. Ordinarily, when you put your card in, you still see a bit of it, so you can pull it back out again. But the scam was that they completely altered the face of the card. The card was eaten, in effect, and then somebody would come and get your card and make payments on it very quickly shortly afterwards. And the other two then, again, the next two are ones where members will be aware of. So their emails, either disguised ransomware attacks, or their emails asking for you to click on a link or to make some sort of payment for something that you're receiving. In this instance, it's things like the COVID vaccines and different things to do with your tax. And the final one then is there's been a fraud relating to someone will phone you up, tell you that your national insurance number is temporarily suspended. The aim of that then is to try and get some of your personal details out of you and use that for potential fraud. Any questions on that report?
Just to say that since the lockdown, there seems to be a vast increase of all that, particularly email scams, trying to get your personal details. I mean, what are the providers doing to sort of eliminate that? Shouldn't we be targeting some of that, not just us?
Prices of cards.
The providers of the internet and the email addressing, shouldn't they be sort of, managing some of this as well? I know we are, but we can't do it alone. So, shouldn't we be, getting onto them and sort of saying, well, look, come on, pull your finger out.
I think they do, Steve. There's been a trend more recently. Internet providers used to block scam emails as a matter of course. They would recognise the email, recognise the links within the email, and obviously be able to see them as they came through and intervene. There's been a trend more recently for computerised creation of server addresses. So the server addresses keep changing on a regular basis, so it's more difficult for the providers to actually identify the spam email and the scam email as it arrives. So I think that's part of the problem. But yeah, there's a recognition that more needs to be done at source.
Yeah, no, I agree. We can't do it alone. It just seems, we're being targeted and we're having to be assured with it, but it's not all our problem.
Yeah, I think part of
questions.
Can I say, Steve, I've had quite a few emails over the last, 6 months about my BT account. Yeah. But they got a very good phishing account, so I just forwarded on to them. But people do get caught out, don't they?
Yeah, particularly the elderly, but yeah, it's an issue. We're not alone. There's a lot of people, but we shouldn't be having to deal with it. There should be things in place to help us. But there you are. That's my personal thing. But,
yeah, you're right, Chair. In terms of kind of, if you did encounter one and then report that to Action Fraud, part of their role is to act on that basis and influence service providers in that way as well. So it's useful to know of their existence and their role, I guess.
Yeah.
And the other thing worth noting as well is that the service will also have their own preventative measures in terms of firewalls and the like, which probably prevent the majority of them coming through.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Anybody else want to add anything more to that? No? Very well. So, you happy with that now, everybody? Is there any more you wanted to add to that report? So if we go...
I think the recommendation's just to note, Chair, so long as members are agreeable to note.
Is the members read to note that? Now you'll have to do a vote, Sal?
No, so long as any member identifies if they don't agree to note it.
All quiet.
That's fine.
That
one's noted.
Right. So we're on... I lost track with them. So we're on item 12 now then. That's the report ending 31st of March 2021 then.
No, I think, Chair, there's the page 171 first.
Yeah, sorry, 171, sorry. Internal Audit Plan 2021-2022. I took the wrong one now.
Yep. I think that's me again, Chair.
Yeah.
So this is our annual plan for the year.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Again, I won't take you through all of the detail, just to highlight some of the kind of the key things really. So in the first page, you can see clearly that some of the themes we're identifying some of our other clients and across the public service is like reaction to the COVID pandemic, Brexit, transition out of the EU, cybercrime, which we kind of touched upon, and also then the ongoing need for financial value for money, particularly working in light of Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. Just to give you some background in terms of how we put together the plan, so we look at risks affecting the public sector more widely, our own client base. We look at the services risk register, and then through discussion with management, then we put together a 3-year strategic plan and a 1-year annual plan, which is this document. And just some of the highlights. So we're, as an audit team, we're continuing to work remotely. Hopefully we'll be able to be on site shortly. Well, obviously no better position than anybody else to predict when that might be, but certainly there's been no diminution in terms of the service provided or the management's response to the audits and helping us to undertake them. So if I just take you through some of the Appendix A. Sometimes people ask about what this is. So this is kind of a collation of all the risks that we're identifying across our client base to give a kind of a high or low risk impact. And again, this informs our thinking in terms of the 3-year strategic plan, annual plan. And what the aim is to try and cover all of these areas within the 3-year cycle. And so Appendix C has the rolling strategic plan. And then Appendix D has the annual plan. So as in previous years, we're looking at 70 days in total in terms of internal audit. If I just highlight some of the ones that perhaps you might not have seen on previous strategic plans. So the first one, safeguarding, as I mentioned. It's a new area for the strategic plan, but an important one given the risks involved. And in quarter 2, core HR. So the service has core HR in place for HR systems. Speaking with management, they would like our input in terms of how the system is used and whether it can be rolled out, but be better integrated with other systems, particularly in relation to finance. and how that might affect, because it's HR, people management, how that can affect establishment budgeting. Moving down into quarter 4, the station visits. Members will remember that usually we do a station visit every year, but usually it's looking at 3 stations, and we're looking at financial and health and safety management on site. There's a change in this year agreed with management. It's to look at the services compliance teams and look at the role they perform and the checks they undertake when they go out on site. And then one that's not been in the plan before, Brexit. So we're looking at how the services identify what potential changes there are, and then sort of make actions or undertake activity to mitigate those risks, particularly around procurement, health and safety, employment law, public order, and also technology. Any questions on the plan?
No, I haven't got any. Anybody else got any? I think it's been a difficult year anyway to try and do any auditing because of the COVID. But yeah, that's my personal view on it. So, are we having to note the report then, Sal?
Chair, this one's for approval of the plan for next year's audit, so we do need to take a vote on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, if you would, please.
Councillor Colbrand?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Spencer?
In favour.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim?
On mute, Sal. Oh, yeah.
Councillor Ibrahim?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Harries?
In favour.
Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Smith?
In favour.
I'm not sure you were in for all of the debate on this one, Councillor White.
And I was going to say to you, I missed half of this, so I have to abstain on this one, but it does sound good what I heard anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, yeah. So if you then move on to item 12, if I got it right. Internal Auditor's Annual Report, year ended 31st of March 2021. That's page 195.
Yes, that's me again, Chair. Yep, yes, this is our annual internal audit opinion, the head of internal audit opinion, based on the work carried out in the year. And just one thing to note, really, this is a draft report at this stage. There's still one audit to undertake in the year, and obviously we'll amend the report based on any findings for that audit. But at this stage, we're not anticipating any change to the internal audit opinion overall. Again, if I just take you through some of the highlights, as with the annual plan, so there's 70 days of audit coverage. Overall, head of internal auditor's opinion is that the areas reviewed during the year to classify as reasonable, effective risk management, control and governance processes in place. That's based on the reviews undertaken in the year. There were no material changes to the plan. A sustainable paper usage, which we spoke about, was carried forward from the 1920 plan and completed in this year. This year's audit plan had a contingency item where it was agreed that we will now look at outside commitments, personal business interests, and that audit will start this week. So overall, the number of reviews carried out, so 10 audits in the year, 4 substantial, 6 reasonable, just similar to the previous year, but we're not the same, as you can see from the numbers. In terms of the number of recommendations made, there were 12 important and 16 routine recommendations this year. I think the difference between the important and in this year compared to last year is there was one audit, as you will have seen from the previous table, that was limited assurance. So I think most of the recommendations that kind of tipped that balance were in that one audit. So overall, kind of similar outturn this year. And as you can see from the table and the audit summary, mainly the recommendations were around compliance, so 5 important and 10 routine, and that's typical across our client base. So the aim, I think, going back right to the beginning of the year, you'll have noticed our reporting format is slightly different. The aim this year was to provide a more nuanced view of where particular recommendations, what types of things were being brought up. So you can see in that table we had separated those into direct and delivery and then different risk areas. But I think the outcome is that most of them are in compliance, and that's kind of where we would expect them to be in terms of the role that we perform. In terms of our commitment to the service, we have our own performance indicators we seek to adhere to. So completion of planned audits, audits completed in time allocation, final reports within 10 days, and also compliance with public sector audit standards. And you can see we've attained all of those targets in year. Another thing to note is that we're subject to ISO 9001, and we've had an independent external review of that this year, which we've passed again. In terms of the annex, as you can see, all the audits are completed. That just confirms that the outside commitments, business interests, will be taken on the 15th of March. And also the follow-up report is yet to come to audit committee. But we've undertaken that, and there were no major issues for that. It's just a time issue in terms of when it's reported to committee. Any questions?
Anybody got any questions? No? Do we need to note this and vote on itself?
This one is noting, Chair, so providing any is content. No.
I didn't understand the word of that.
Yeah, it's only for noting, Chair. So
yeah, no, that's all right.
Yeah, there's no
that's why I said there was nothing attached to it. So the members happy to note that report. Anybody not? Well, that's everyone then. All right.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, Chair. I have to go for work now, so I'm going to leave the meeting.
All right. Thanks, Jack.
Cheers, Steve.
Right then. Well, thanks for that. Anyway, if we move on to item 14.
13.
Proposed new terms of reference for scrutiny committee, and that's page 219.
Chair, item 13, completion of the statement of accounts.
That's what we just done, did we?
No, page 203.
Yeah. That's what we just completed. Yeah.
No, we just did the internal auditor's annual report.
Yeah, I just asked about the completion of the accounts. That's what I asked. All right, item 13, completion of 2019-20 accounts 203. I did do that one earlier. If you look back.
Chair, thank you very much. This is actually a report from Audit Wales. I have been in contact with Gillian, our new audit manager from Audit Wales this morning. She's had a problem logging onto the call this morning. She was intended to be here. I have asked her, and she wasn't intending to raise anything specifically on this report. The report itself just highlights some of the detailed recommendations following the audit of accounts for 1920. Don't propose again to take you through each of the recommendations. Generally, there are some which kind of reflect the COVID environment and the difficulty of completing accounts and getting tasks done within that time period. However, there are plans in place to try and address some of those issues going forward. So we don't have any great problems with the recommendations in the report, and management comments you'll see largely agree what's involved there. There was just a couple of things I wanted to touch on. First was Exhibit 4 around related party disclosures. Members and officers indeed will have started receiving requests to fill out their related party disclosure forms. I'd be really grateful if members could ensure when they get those that they do respond to ensure that we get a complete set back. And I mentioned earlier in the Treasury Management Report, and Geraint touched on some of this within the Capital Monitoring Report as well, the capital budget setting process. The auditors have recommended that we kind of just do a review of the budget setting process for capital because of the situation we've had over a number of years with slippage. What we will do is pick that up, as I said earlier, around the development of the new medium-term financial strategy for the next few years, to look at how we build the capital budget in, whether we're being overambitious in respect to the sums that we're setting, or whether or not there's any action we need to take in just tweaking the way in which we monitor and manage the process of setting the programme. So we will pick that up in due course. Other than that, Chair, there was nothing specific that I wanted to pick up. Everything else we're addressing or is in action.
Yeah. Does anyone want to raise anything with Chris? No?
Only one question, please. Under Exhibit 7, there's a reference there to pensioners of 208,000. Was that an error with us, or the authority that deals with pensions for us, Rhondda, isn't it? Rhondda
It's actually about our accounting methodology, Councillor Smith. So it's not an error with the actual payments or incorrectly paid or anything like that. It's simply that we've classified them wrongly within the accounts, so we just need to correct.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anyway, any other questions for Chris? No. So, do we note that now, Sal, or do we need to take a vote?
No, we can just note that one, providing everyone's in agreement. Right. Any dissenters?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you're going in and out, Sal. That's why we can't hear you. Because you
I think my connection's pretty awful today.
Yeah, I did say about it, but I got no answer, so I moved on to the next one. I would have come back to it. Item 14, proposed new terms of reference for Scrutiny Committee 219. No.
Right. I'm hoping you can hear me through this one.
Yes, yeah, we can now, yeah.
So this report is a follow-on from the Scrutiny Committee's consideration of this issue over the last municipal year. If you recall, it emanated from the AGM this year, where the Chair asked for proposals to be looked at to reform the Fire Authority's scrutiny. Rather long report with quite a lot of appendices. You'll notice within the report I've included the report that went to scrutiny, detailing the different options that members might want to pursue. At that meeting, members decided that they wanted to pursue in more detail the option 4 within that paper. And they subsequently confirmed some draft proposed terms of reference to go forward for further consideration by Fire Authority, which set out some of the, in effect, ground rules as to how the committee would be structured, which basically meant that if the continuing committees of Finance, Audit and Performance Management and HR and Equalities still continued, then the members of the Scrutiny Committee wouldn't sit on either of those two committees. As a consequence of that, members will note there's a few coloured charts within the document, and the key one is on page 242, which indicates how the committees could be structured if the HR and Equalities and Finance committees continued with their current terms of reference. It does mean, to make the numbers work, that we would have to reduce the membership of the HR and Equalities Committee back down to 10. Members who have been on the authority for quite a while will remember that it used to be 10 and was increased to 15 when the HR and Equalities Committee were dealing with a lot of appeals, so that we could enable panels to be got together at fairly short notice. So this is really for members' consideration to see what their views are on this before the matter is reported back to Fire Authority with an update and or decision at their next meeting. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
This is the question I got for the committee. Looking at all the proposals, the current proposal looks quite complex in how members are nominated. It also looks quite tight on numbers should any members be unavailable. Are there any other ways of achieving the same objectives using existing FA members, perhaps by combining the finance and HR committees and their memberships to make things more straightforward? Because I've looked into it and I think it's very complex, but I don't think it's achievable unless we got all the members attending.
Yeah, certainly. We can make any configuration work that members want. So we could, for example, combine the current finance committee and the HR committee into a new resources committee, for want of a better word at the moment. And certainly then if you had your 10 members on that committee, either one from each authority or politically balanced, dependent on what members determine, you potentially then could have more members on your scrutiny committee, which would make quorum slightly easier. So that's certainly an option we can put within the report to Fire Authority when we update them.
What do members think of that? Because I've looked at it quite intensely, and I don't see a way it would work efficiently for us. And what I've just said in that statement now, I think is the way forward. Has anybody got any comments they'd like to make on regarding that? We're all quiet.
No, what was proposed by Sally, I thought, okay, this could work. This, this seems to be okay. Yes, I remember the numbers going up for HR and equality. But the point you made about members attending, but then, okay, that's part of the job. You turn up for the meeting. Unless there's a very good reason for not doing so, says me.
I suppose we look into that new prospect of merging the committees, and if somebody would like to second it to move it forward, because I don't think the existing one is viable for what we need.
Can you say again what you were proposing, please, Steve?
Yeah, what I was proposing, that, like I said, the current proposal looked quite complex, for members to nominate. It looks quite tight on a number, should any members be unavailable. To achieve the same objectives using the existing Fire Authority members, I thought about combining the Finance and HR committee together and their memberships to make things more straightforward. Now, Sally's just explained by having a scrutiny committee and the Finance and HR committee together, giving us viable membership.
Isn't that a really good? I support that.
Yeah, because the thing is, the current system is very, very tight, and if people are not turning up, there's not proper membership from each authority, or for me, it don't work. A lot of investigation.
I mean, whatever will give officers, the time to continue doing the good job that they are doing, and I think we've got to pursue with it. I think that, and that's we've just got to go, because, I mean, if people can't be bothered turning up, then we have to make the availability of amalgamating two sectors to make it work.
Well, you're right, and we've got to make it work, but that the other provision doesn't make it work if everybody don't attend. So
no.
Sure, I think this is the only way forward at the moment. I've looked at so many of the different options, and quite honestly, I was worried about the original scrutiny committee. It needs to be a decent size to be able to scrutinise properly. There was going to be a quorum of 3. To me, a scrutiny committee, that's a bit low.
Yes, I agree with that, Pam.
Are we happy to move on the proposal I suggested to look into?
Chair, I can certainly include those for the Fire Authority report. Just on Councillor Drake's point on quorum is a third of members. So even on a committee of 10, the quorum will only be 4. So it'll just be one more, by the way the quorum rules work.
Okay.
But I can certainly put some proposals
If you could, Sal, because
within the Fire Authority report to reflect members' discussion today.
yeah.
I think that would be good. And then, do we need to agree on something today, Steve, or can we?
Do you want to vote on that, Sal, or?
Certainly, we can take a vote that members are happy for me to include that as their recommendation going forward. The Fire Authority, this additional option be considered. So, Councillor Colburn.
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Councillor Spencer.
Agree.
Councillor Drake.
Agreed.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Agreed.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Harries has gone. Councillor Hussey.
Agreed.
Councillor Smith.
I'm not sure, so I'm going to abstain, please, Chairman.
Okay. And Councillor White.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you.
But basically, I don't understand where I'm going, Chair.
Chair, I'm going to have to excuse from here onwards because I have to go to another meeting.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for that. Anyway,
do we come to
that one?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Right. We happy with that, Sal, moving forward? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I've got that. Thank you.
Right. Let's move on to item 15, a Strategic Risk Register Report 2021, Quarter 3, page 245.
Yeah, this is members' regular report on strategic risks within the organisation. Risks are all summarised on page 248 of your report. And you'll notice that there's a number of high risks, a number of medium, and just one green lower ranking strategic risk. I don't propose to go through every risk in turn as they're fairly clearly laid out, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have on any of them.
No, I think they're quite a good report, Sal. Any questions for Sal on the report? No? Well, Sal, it must have been a good report, Sal. You got away with that.
I don't take credit for it. Our stats team are very good at these.
Yeah. Do we need to note that, or do you want to?
Yes, if we just note that report, please.
Right.
Providing all members are in agreement.
Anybody disagree?
Oh, that's fine.
Or abstain? No?
Okay.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That's it, yeah.
I
Next
just wish
one. Item 16, the Register of Gifts and Hospitality. That's on page 297.
Yes, I'm going to cover that one again, Chair. So this report is the overview of the Gifts and Hospitality Register for 2020. And the background is, in order for us to carry out business fairly, openly and honestly, preserving the integrity and reputation of the service, our members of staff are required to declare gifts and hospitality. And the register is reported to the Finance, Audit and Performance Management Committee for inspection on an annual basis to be recorded in the minutes. The recommendation is that members note the contents of the register in line with the internal audit recommendations. I'll just take a moment or two to talk members through the register this year. The first thing that I need to advise members is that the second to last item on page 302, which was entry into a competition with the prize of a home office makeover, there's an error on the table, and I do apologise, members. That gift was not accepted by the officer concerned. Just to give you some background around that, they were automatically entered into a competition on attendance to an event. And as soon as they were advised that they had been a winner, they declined the gift. So I do apologise for that error being there. If we can have that noted on the minutes, I'd very much appreciate it. Looking at the rest of the register this year, there's been a marked increase in the number of gifts and hospitality received across the service, and the vast majority of this influx of gifts was due to the public response to the COVID pandemic. You can see the majority of them happened in April, May and June of this financial year. Compared to previous years, it's actually a 183% increase on the number of items that have been offered to the service. So I just wanted to make members aware of that. One of the really pleasing things is that members of the service have been very proactive in declaring these gifts and hospitality so that we could respond appropriately. When you look at the register itself, there were 4 items that were declined. One was this Home Office makeover. Another was a slab of alcoholic beverages, which had been offered to crews, which was donated as a raffle prize for the firefighters charity. There was also a cash collection for some crews, which was returned. And then have I said the 4 now? I think I've covered all the one. Oh no, the other one that was declined, an energy drink was offered to the fire service, a significant number of energy drinks, which following consultation with our occupational health unit, we respectfully declined the energy drink because of the potential dubious health benefits. It didn't really fit in with some of our well-being and health objectives. So that's the hospitality register. If there are any questions from members, I'm more than happy to take them.
Just an observation. It just shows what the public have of the esteem of the fire service. That's all I would say. I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed by the professionalism, and they're a credit to the service. So that's my opinion. Anyone else like to say anything?
No, I would have liked to have been in the Penarth station when they had the crispy cream donuts.
Yes.
I was waiting for something like that, Pam. No, that's brilliant, and everything they richly deserve. I know they turn things down, but at the end of the day, rightly deserved. The recommendations that members note the contents of the hospitality and gifts register in line with internal audit recommendations. Are we happy to note them? Sal, do you want to take a vote? Or?
No.
No, that's just for noting. So providing no member disagrees.
No.
Anybody abstain or disagree? No? I didn't think you would. Excellent. Right then, that's excellent. If we move on to item 17, which is second draft of annual governance statement 2020-2021, page 331.
Page 303, this one, Chair, for members.
Oh, sorry, it's my I got new glasses. 303, yeah. I was squinting down like that. 303.
That's okay. So I'm going to cover this one again for us, Chair. So this is the second draft of the annual governance statement. The annual governance statement, the initial draft was reviewed by the Scrutiny group, and a number of the comments and observations have been acted upon, which I'll explain as we go through. So the annual governance statement explains how the authority has complied with the code and meets the regulations of the Accounts and Audit Wales regulations. And it's written in accordance with guidance produced by the Chartered Institute of Public Accountability. The idea of the governance statement is to show that we provide adequate governance in the decision making within the authority, and the annual governance statement will be published within the statement of accounts. It isn't limited to the activity solely within the financial year. So there may be amendments to the annual governance statement after this meeting, prior to it being incorporated into the statement of accounts and then approved by the full authority. And the format of the AGS has been approved by Audit Office Wales. One of the things that we did this year, there were a couple of recommendations from Audit Wales on the last annual governance statement, and those two have been embodied in the new format of the report. So it's a very long document, members, so I won't take you through every page. One of the things that we've done from the first draft to the second draft is we've tried to make the document a slightly easier read in a more acceptable format to the reader. So we've started that with a contents page and an index so that it's easier to navigate through the document. The annual governance statement talks about the scope of responsibility of the authority and the purpose of the governance framework. Moving into the document, section 3, it talks about the governance framework and talks about the executive leadership team, the constitutional documents, and allows people to see them on the website when they look at this document electronically. It also talks about the medium-term financial strategy, our strategic plan, and the fact that we monitor our performance against that strategic plan and our statutory indicators. It goes on to talk about our risk management policy and committees of the authority. It looks at our procurement strategy and our counter-fraud arrangements and whistleblowing arrangements. It moves on then to talk about internal audit and our external audit arrangements for the authority. We then go on to talk about the annual pay policy statement and the publishing of the gender pay gap information. And then moving on to section 4 of the AGS, there is a review of effectiveness. Now, in this section of the document, you will see a number of red elements. This is where we are still waiting for information to embody this into the annual governance statement. For example, the committee has just received the internal auditor's opinion, which will then be inserted into this section of the document. And then we then have assurance from the Auditor General through Audit Wales. And then the next section of the document looks at the significant governance issues and challenges for 2021. One of those being COVID, not the only one that the organisation has managed to work through. But we talk about the little impact that COVID had on the fire authority meetings in the year. One was cancelled at the very beginning of the pandemic, but since then authority meetings have been held virtually on video conferencing. It then talks about the critical incident team and how the service have responded to the various stages of the pandemic and how we've supported staff in the different roles that they do to enable them to continue to serve the communities of South Wales in a safe way. We also talk about some of the activities that were very temporarily minimised until new safe ways of working were developed. It goes on to talk about the significant investment that the service and the authority have made in video conferencing to enable us to engage not only across the organisation internally, but also to enable external engagement with our communities as well in a virtual way, which is nice and safe under the current restrictions that we're in. Goes on to talk about our responsibilities to the Welsh Language Act, and about the fact that the business management information system has been developed in year, as has the core and payroll system. Particularly with core, they've delivered the online recruitment module, which enables prospective employees to apply for posts electronically. We talk about being statutory partners on the 9 public service boards and the support that we provide there. And then we talk about some of the significant property and building works that we've been doing. Again, members, that paragraph will be updated in time for it to be embodied into the statement of accounts. We then go on to talk about governance issues and challenges for 21-22. Some of the things in the last 12 months we haven't fully put to bed, so we will continue to find a strategic way through some of those challenges. And we will also continue to develop our in-house systems. We acknowledge that public sector funding remains a challenge and always is, but there may be significant challenges going forward. And we also acknowledge the white paper reform of fire and rescue authorities in Wales and the fact that we will consider any implications when the response of that is received, and also the impact of the local government election Wales bill. And we also acknowledge that we will continue to progress the biodiversity and carbon reduction plans. The next section it looks at the governance action plans, and it looks at the 2020-21 and the progress that we've had against each of those actions. Again, members, those will be updated in time for the embodiment within the accounts. And then we've also got the governance action plan for 21-22, which is going to be reviewed throughout March with all the lead officers there to make sure that this document is as accurate as it can be when it becomes embodied within the statement of accounts. And then I'll just draw members' attention to the summary conclusion in section 8 on page 328. Again, this will be updated, but this is a new element within the governance statement that we've implemented following discussion with Audit Wales and following best practice. So that's the annual governance statement there for you members. Happy to take any questions or suggestions for improvement.
Very good report, Sarah. I have read it. Very good. Any questions that you'd like to ask, Sarah? No, I think you've covered that well.
No, thank you for a very good summary. The summary conclusion, that final paragraph, or paragraph 8, that's good. It brings it all together. But no, thank you very much, Chairman.
Good. If there's no more questions, I'll move on to the recommendations then. But members are requested to consider the content of the second draft of the annual government statement and whether they wish to make any amendments to the document going forward. Are we happy with them recommendations?
Yep, because work is ongoing on those comments. That's fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, take a vote on that now, Sal.
I'm happy, providing no members got any changes that they want to make at the current time. We can just note that.
Any amendments from any member or anybody abstaining or?
No.
I have to ask that.
Yeah. No, I've had my one abstention.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, as far as I'm aware, there's no amendments. So.
Thank you.
Right. And we'll move on to item 18 then. I've got my right glasses on. Wales Audit Office inquiries to those charged with governance, draft response, and a 331. I will get it right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take this one. First thing to note, in the covering report, I obviously refer to them as their old name, Wales Audit Office. It should be Audit Wales throughout the covering report. Oh. So thankfully, Jill, the new audit manager, is not in attendance at the moment, so that'll be my first telling off before we start. It's a sort of standard report that we do on an annual basis in advance of our preparation of the statement of accounts and the sort of the following audit that Audit Wales will carry out. It's a formal communication that we're required to complete And what they ask for in advance of that audit commencing is that they ask for responses from Fire Authority as those charged with governance and from senior management team to a set of questions which are set out in the questionnaire attached to Appendix 1. What they seek is for assurance and sort of responses around our assurance and assessment of risks, the risk of material misstatements that may be within the accounts due to elements of fraud. So they have, the questions ask for responses of what processes have we got in place to make sure that that those accounts remain free from fraud. There's also within the questionnaire then the second element talks about the impacts of laws and regulations, and ensuring that as an authority that we're compliant with all relevant laws that will have implications on the statement of accounts. And if we are non-compliant, what actions that we have taken to try and rectify any non-compliance. And then the third element of the questionnaire asks for notification or sort of discussions around related party transactions. So any significant related party transactions that are identified. So the responses have been sort of drafted and completed on behalf of members and of the senior management team. So it's really for consideration if there's any other areas that need to be considered within the draft responses, Chair.
So is there any questions regarding that?
No.
No. Well, you got off easy. The recommendation is that the Fire and Rescue Authority confirms its response to the Wales Audit Office questions as detailed in Appendix 1 attached. So everybody in agreement with that?
Chair, I will need to take a vote on this one because
I know that. I just make sure it works.
Confirming. Yeah. Councillor Colbrand?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Spencer?
Agree.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim's gone. Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Harries has gone. Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Smith?
Support.
And Councillor White's gone. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Right, we move on to item 19, the Forward Work Programme 2020-21, page 347, and I know that's Sally's.
Yeah, this is really more from members' information. Obviously, you've come to the end of your municipal year of meetings, so that's just to note completion of the work programme.
All right, everybody's happy with that, and they're all aware of what's on the Forward Work Programme anyway.
Yeah.
And item 20, any items of business that the chairperson deems urgent, don't try and meet them with new glasses.
Sure, you've been to the optician, right one?
I know. My other lens fell out and I had to put these on. So there. But thanks everybody. It's been quite a big meeting today, and just thank all the officers for their reports and their hard work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll see you all soon.
Yeah. Take care.
Yes.
Take
Next
care.
week. Next Monday.